So you got two guys where you on the one hand you think the Republican Party are the union busters, but Cuomo's lieutenant governor is a clear union buster, and he's made it clear he's going to be hard on them.
You know, Mike said that the Negroes out there yesterday with Cuomo ought to be ashamed. No way in the world. They have no shame. They've demonstrated that. And look at what you're talking about. You're talking about Charlie Rangel, Hazel Dukes, Danny Farrell, Keith Wright. I mean, all of those, H.R. McCall, Bill Thompson, all of those have been white folks' butt kisses their whole career. They're interested in their own but not the interest of the community, not the interest of the poor, not the interest of the working class. So why should they be ashamed? That's their whole career.
And that what we responded to was issue number 2. As a result, I feel, of not only the actions and the activities of the Freedom Party, but to an article that appeared in the Amsterdam News which criticized Cuomo for not responding to the black community. He pulls off a facade, attempting as if he's interested in the Harlem community. 35 days before the actual election, he makes an appearance. And, you know, Julian, let's have your comments. And it's sort of, you know, it's really disingenuous. It's really harmful for these African-American so-called leaders, but as Father Lucas always correctly says, leading blacks, would conduct some kind of you know, joke like this. But what is some of your comments on what happened? Well, because you were out there yesterday.
Yes, I was.
Greeting Cuomo.
Yes, we did. The Freedom Party was out there strong. You know, and you know, I had an opportunity to listen to some of the comments that were made by some of those so-called leading blacks. And Bill Thompson made a statement. He said that he will not accept the overt racism of Palladino, but it really touched me and it really made me think, because he's basically saying he's willing to accept the covert racism by Cuomo, and that's very problematic. So that really says to me that those and these are deals that are being made by black or leading blacks in our community to sell or attempt to sell the votes and the desires of African people to Cuomo. And we really have to be clear. The only option is the Freedom Party and Charles Barron. Everything and everyone else politically around this gubernatorial race will fail the African and the Latino communities.
You know, it's like the Negroes who keep saying Bloomberg, he's better than Giuliani. Well, the only difference is one is overt and the other is covert.
Because the condition of our people, when you talk about 50% unemployment with blacks, when you talk about no black commissioners, or very few black commissioners, Bloomberg never reinstated 20% set aside, so blacks do very little business with the city. When you talk about the stop, question, and frisk, our people have stopped hundreds of thousand times more under Bloomberg than under Giuliani. When you talk about the homelessness, when you talk about the schisms between black and white income, when you talk about New York City having the most segregated schools, or one of the most segregated school systems in the country, when you talk about the failures of the education in this country, I mean...
And one thing people have to be clear, because sometimes we don't articulate it. When we talk about stops, we talk about illegal stops by the New York City Police Department. And with Cuomo being the AG, the highest ranking law enforcement in the state, how dare he allow this criminality to proceed without addressing it?
Well, the fact of the matter is, you know, when you juxtapose black leaders with leading blacks, you have to remember that they have been anointed by the white plantation. You know, this is, I mean, I've seen this movie before. You know, this is just another movie. This is just a remake of an old movie. You know, Bill Thompson, he has no credibility in the black community. He has not taken a black cause. H.R. McCall, you can go down the line with Hazel Dukes and them. See, the thing you have to remember, they have been anointed by white folks, not black folks. They are the Negro intelligentsia, and they're not that bright, by the way. So I'm using that in quotes. These are the Negroes in the plantation who have been allowed to cook the food that we have to eat. And it's unfortunate that they don't do the shopping. The white folks do the shopping, give them the food, and they cook it, and we have to ingest it. And it's unfortunate. So what we always end up with is so-called consensus candidates. You know, we have to choose between H. Carl McCall, we have to a Dinkins, and that like Bill Thompson. We can't look at a Charles Barron because our minds are so messed up and so conditioned to supporting who we think white folks anoint that we can't anoint a Charles Barron and look at him for higher office, only local offices, because our minds are so confused that we say who the white folks like, because in turn that's who we like because they do the shopping. And then those Negroes cook the food, and then they serve us. And that's unfortunate. We're going to change that paradigm with the Freedom Party.
Real quick, before we get to our phone calls, the MTA recently announced that they're going to invest millions and millions and millions of your taxpayers' dollars. This is the MTA that we talk about very frequently, with over-budget capital projects to the tune of multi-millions, who spend hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars a year. One of the things that Charles Barron has said is that we're calling for the dismantling of the MTA. There are state agencies, there are city agencies that have a transit bureaucracy within them, so we're like tripling the bureaucracy. They're unnecessary. They should be disbanded. You know, they have double bucks. They high budgets from citizens. You know, Julian, we'll start with you.
You know, it's unfortunate that they have an opportunity to basically waste taxpayers' money on some of these projects without the community, without taxpayers having a say in how this money is being utilized. This security system appears to be one that's going to be unmanned, at least at the point where the security system is. You'll be able to press a button, you'll be able to contact either the headquarters or another entity or place within the MTA, but that's not going to give you someone that's going to immediately address your problem, especially if there's a robbery or something to that effect at that particular location. There has to be research, there has to be some investigation in how that the MTA comes up with these programs, who these programs are being filtered to, and where that money is going. Because I question that very seriously.
Because you know someone has a contract to put these in, but you know there should be a question: why at the time when they talk about raising the fare, would they even invest in additional unnecessary technology? I mean, needless to say, they said the Second Avenue line is $1 billion over budget, and that's not even nowhere near being fixed. Father.
Well, as Julian indicated, I'd love to have had the contract. I don't know who the contract is with and who got what.
I bet you it wasn't you or anybody that looked like you.
Exactly. And, but it highlights the fact that the MTA is not a state agency, it's an authority, and very little, because it's not a state agency, is very little control that the people have to over it. They deliberately did that. These authorities are independent, really, except when it comes to getting money, are independent of the state and therefore independent of the voters.
Right. Well, unfortunately, you had the MTA intertwined with at least 8 or 9 other authorities, and these are all boards that white men sit on that control billions of dollars of taxpayers' dollars, and we are finding out the more we look at all of these things that white men are not earning money, they are stealing money. And this is just a legal way of thuggery and theft, and this is all they've been doing. There's no need, and this is why if Charles Barron becomes the next governor, which I believe he has a good chance to do, he will disband, and that's one of the things he's going to do. He's going to disband the MTA as it's currently constructed, as well as those other agencies that's all taking their cut. That's why they want to get Governor Patterson out quickly, because they always get their cut, and they were scared of having 2 or 3 black guys in the room, as opposed to the 3 white men in the back door room that always cut up all the money for all these other billionaires. These billionaires are not earning it, they're stealing it.
Right.
The MTA board he's going to dismantle.
Right. And what I allow people to have to understand is you can't look at the white media, and I don't say mainstream media because they're white media. They try to suggest as if Charles Barron doesn't have a way in the world to win this election. Malcolm told us, when you listen to the Ballad of the Bullet years ago, you know, that even in areas where the black population is a so-called minority, the white vote is so equally split, you know, that any large turnout of African Americans can make a determination who's going to win. When you add now today with the Latino vote, just as in the race for mayor, you know, they were saying that Thompson didn't have a chance. he was being outspent, and he only lost by less than 50,000 votes. He could have been the mayor of New York City. So we can't go along with some of the projections. When some people attempt to suggest that voting for Charles Bannon is throwing away your vote, not so. He can win. And, you know, we can't pay attention to the white media, not mainstream media, the white media who has a personal agenda and motivation in terms of suggesting that, you know, don't vote for Charles Bannon because it's a wasted vote. But, you know, going back to the MTA, and before we go to our phone calls, we want to let the family know on October 19th, this October 19th, we're going to have a town hall meeting once again in our studios. So we're inviting our listening audience to come down. We want to talk about the Freedom Party as well as a whole lot of other issues. So mark it on your calendar, October 19th. We asked you to call and reserve a space so we can sort of know how many chairs are put out. But it's going to be a live studio audience once again. We did it probably about a year ago.
Yes.
So we're going to have another town hall meeting. That's October 19th. And we'll talk about it later on in this program as well as you know, future programs. But we want to talk about another issue. Michael, why don't you introduce us to what's happened to what's the sisters?
The Scott sisters?
The Scott sisters. When you talk about this corrupted criminal justice system that we have.
Well, they were arrested. These are two actual sisters who were arrested. They were, I think, in their teens at the time. In maybe 93, 94, they were arrested, and they were they claimed that they stole $15 or something like $15 of petty cash from someone, armed robbery, and they were given life sentences. Then it was discovered later that the police officers forced testimony from witnesses, and that even the victims in the case retracted their statements and said they were not the ones who did it, and the witnesses retracted their statements, and the judge refused to acknowledge it, and it's going on, and even state people who control the state, the governor, and so on, has ignored it, and this is going on, and we're in 2010, and these young sisters who, and one who had children at an early age, their children have watched their mother grow up. They've grown up watched their mother while they grew up. Their mother's been in jail all these years, and it's totally unnecessary. They didn't do the crime, and even if they had done the crime, for $15, they should be out now, and it's a shame. This only happens to blacks, and it's an outright shame.
Well, Father Lucas, we shouldn't be surprised, although like Michael said, we should be alarmed. When you talk about some of the raids that was recently conducted by the FBI in Chicago, and I think in Indianapolis, we see law enforcement from federal to local jurisdictions becoming more aggressive.
Well, you know, I lived through the McCarthy era, and I never thought it would see it worse come back and in worse form, particularly with a blackface in the White House. What these thugs are now doing, because of the extension of the so-called Patriot Act, which again Barack signed for the extension, that everything they call terrorists, that whether it's a glass of water or whatever, they could pull you in as contributing to a terrorist organization. So what they did in Chicago and Minneapolis, and of course it's a national thing, so it'll be coming here soon, they broke into and deliberately targeted all of the anti-war demonstrators, all of those who demonstrated against the Republican National Committee, and so forth, all of those who have any opposition to what's going on in the government. They broke into their homes, took out their computers, their cell phones, everything that they wanted to, and then demanded that they make a grand jury appearance and a summons before the grand jury to investigate as to whether they have been contributing to terrorist organizations. And this is a national FBI program, and the Attorney General's office, which is supposed to be in control, and the President is allowing this to go on.